In this video, we explore the fascinating prophecies of Edgar Cayce, one of the most important seers of the 20th century. For those who are new to Cayce, there is a mysterious discovery that even science has never been able to fully explain. Known as a sleeping prophet, Cayce made his predictions while in a trance state. It is noteworthy that, although he died in 1945, many of his prophecies have come true to this day. The timeliness of his prophecies is particularly relevant because, according to his readings, the coming year will be marked by significant upheavals, changes that will affect society, nature, and our understanding of humanity. In this video, we examine Cayce's 10 most important prophecies and what they may mean for each of us. What is special about Cayce's predictions is that they are not limited to catastrophes. He saw humanity in a phase of transformation that would lead to an expanded consciousness. He predicted an era of global change in which humanity would evolve spiritually. Although this may seem unbelievable or unrealistic at first, Cayce predicted with astonishing accuracy events that did not occur until decades after his death, from earthquakes to medical breakthroughs to economic crises. Between geopolitical shifts, technological advances, and spiritual transformation, the coming year could mark the beginning of an entirely new chapter for humanity. These 10 prophecies could fundamentally change your perspective on the future. One of Cayce's most significant predictions for this time relates to a comprehensive spiritual awakening worldwide. He foresaw that humanity would reach a new level of consciousness in which spirituality plays a central role in life. It is not a simple religious change, but a global transformation of our thinking and feeling. According to Cayce, this awakening is triggered in particular by the various crises, be they ecological, economic, or social in nature. He emphasized that the greatest challenges facing humanity also represent opportunities for growth and change. We could be at a turning point where people are increasingly looking for deeper meaning in their lives that goes beyond material aspects. The signs of this spiritual awakening are already visible today, be it through the increasing spread of meditative practices, the increased pursuit of inner well-being, or the growing search for closeness to nature. According to Cayce's predictions, these trends will intensify in the coming years. This spiritual transformation would have far-reaching effects on our interpersonal relationships. Egocentric thinking and competition could increasingly be replaced by values such as altruism, cooperation, and harmony with our planet. Cayce saw this inner revolution as a fundamental change that would reshape the entire structure of society. In the coming years, this may mean a society in which people develop a stronger connection to the spiritual dimension, which could lead to more peace and mutual understanding. This development is accompanied by a profound shift in consciousness in which material values are no longer the main focus. Another significant prophecy concerns geological and climatic changes that could fundamentally affect our planet. In his readings, Cayce often spoke of dramatic earth changes such as earthquakes, floods, and volcanic eruptions that could reshape entire landscapes. One of his most notable predictions refers to a possible pole shift. Cayce predicted that the Earth's axis could shift, causing drastic climate changes. These upheavals would affect temperatures, sea levels, and even the stability of the Earth's ground. Some regions could be flooded, while new land masses could emerge in other places. Scientists are already studying the possibility of a pole shift, although this phenomenon is still controversial in the scientific community. Cayce interpreted these events not only as climatic changes, but also as a kind of new beginning for our planet. These natural events could serve as transitional signs necessary for humanity to prepare for a new era. These predictions are particularly relevant today, as we are already experiencing extreme weather phenomena such as hurricanes and forest fires, the intensity of which may increase. Climate change, which has already been intensively researched, could accelerate these events, confirming Cayce's warnings from almost a century ago. Humanity must prepare for these changes and recognize their deeper meaning. For Cayce, these events were a wake-up call for humanity to reorient itself and undergo a spiritual and material transformation. Those who are prepared to adapt to these challenges will be the ones who will benefit most from this time of change. In his readings, Cayce spoke at length about major economic upheavals. According to his predictions, the near future could represent a decisive turning point for the global economy, with shocks that would fundamentally change global financial systems and wealth distribution. Cayce predicted that the traditional economic structures based on wealth accumulation and resource exploitation would be fundamentally questioned. A central element of his prophecies is the redistribution of resources, which is intended to reduce the gap between rich and poor. Cayce believed in the emergence of a fairer financial equilibrium, which would come about not only through political action, but also through a collective awareness of the limits of the current economic system. This transformation could manifest itself through far-reaching reforms in global economic policy aimed at reducing systemic inequalities. In particular, Cayce emphasized the role of economic crises as catalysts for change. In his view, these crises are necessary steps towards the reorganization of the global system. It is quite possible that in the coming years we will witness a recession or financial shocks that force governments to fundamentally rethink their economic policies. A shift towards more sustainable economic forms based on fair models could be imminent. Also noteworthy is his prediction of the emergence of new forms of currency. Cayce often spoke of the evolution of monetary systems and may have foreseen the emergence of digital currencies or alternative forms of transaction. Given the current rise of cryptocurrencies and decentralized financial technologies, these prophecies seem particularly relevant today. These technologies could revolutionize traditional financial systems and offer alternatives to conventional banks and centralized financial institutions. In addition, Cayce foresaw an increasing connection between spirituality and economics. He prophesied that financial decisions made by individuals and nations would increasingly be influenced by ethical and spiritual considerations. This change could also be reflected in corporate governance, with increased focus on sustainability, ethics, and collective well-being rather than pure profit maximization. This vision points to a time of profound economic reforms triggered by crises, with the goal of building a fairer and more conscious society. These changes would not only affect financial markets, but also the way each individual perceives and uses money. The transformation could lead to a new economic paradigm that distributes wealth more fairly and promotes sustainable growth. Another important aspect of his economic prophecies concerns the development of new work models. Cayce foresaw that traditional forms of employment would change, with greater emphasis on creativity, personal fulfillment, and social contribution. This change could lead to more flexible working hours, increased home working, and a better work-life balance. The transformation of the world of work that Cayce foresaw goes far beyond superficial changes. He prophesied a fundamental reorientation of our understanding of work and productivity. In this new era, people would no longer work just for a living, but their activities would be more aligned with their personal life purpose and spiritual goals. This development would be accompanied by a profound transformation of corporate culture. Organizations would move away from hierarchical structures and instead create more collaborative, transparent work environments. The integration of spiritual practices in the workplace, such as meditation or mindfulness exercises, could become the norm. Cayce also foresaw that new technologies would support this transformation of the world of work. Automation and artificial intelligence would take over routine tasks, allowing people to focus on more creative and fulfilling activities. This would lead to a reassessment of what we consider productive work. Another important aspect of his prophecies concerns the development of skills and competencies. People would focus more on developing their emotional and spiritual intelligence, as these skills would become increasingly important in the new world of work. Traditional professional qualifications would be supplemented by more holistic competency profiles. The relationship between employers and employees would change fundamentally. Instead of pure employment relationships, partnerships based on mutual respect and shared values would emerge. Companies would increasingly function as communities in which the well-being of all those involved is the focus. This new work culture would also lead to a change in compensation models. Traditional salary structures could be replaced by more flexible systems that take into account not only financial remuneration, but also personal development opportunities and social contributions. The definition of success in professional life would be rewritten. Cayce also prophesied an increase in self-employed and project-based forms of work. People would have more freedom to shape their work according to their personal values and life goals. This would lead to a more diverse and dynamic working world, in which individual creativity and initiative would be more encouraged. The geographical boundaries of work would dissolve as digital technologies enable global collaboration. This would lead to a more international and culturally diverse working world, in which people could collaborate and learn from each other across national and cultural borders. This transformation would also lead to a rethinking work-life balance. The strict separation between work and private life would give way to a more holistic view in which both areas are harmoniously integrated. Flexible working hours and locations would enable people to better balance their professional obligations with personal and family needs. The changes in the world of work that Cayce foresaw would ultimately lead to a more humane and fulfilling form of work that develops the potential of each individual while contributing to the common good. The transformation to the more humane world of work that Cayce foresaw would be characterized by various innovative concepts. In his visions, he described a world of work in which people would no longer be constrained by rigid schedules and spatial limitations. Instead, a flexible work culture oriented towards individual needs would develop. This new working reality would be characterized by a profound understanding of human needs. Companies would recognize that promoting the well-being of their employees is directly related to productivity and innovation. Meditation, yoga, and other practices to promote mental health would become natural parts of everyday working life. A special focus would be on the integration of learning and working. Continuous training would no longer be seen as an additional burden, but as a natural part of professional development. Companies would create learning environments that promote both professional and personal development. The hierarchies in companies would change fundamentally. Instead of rigid management structures, flexible teams would emerge that reorganize themselves depending on the project and task. Managers would see themselves more as mentors and facilitators who help employees reach their full potential. Cayce also foresaw a change in the way work performance is evaluated. Traditional performance metrics would be replaced by more holistic evaluation systems that also take into account social skills, creativity, and contribution to team spirit. The quality of work would become more important than pure quantity. Another important aspect would be increased collaboration between different generations. Older employees would be valued for their experience and wisdom, while younger employees would bring new perspectives and technological understanding. This intergenerational collaboration would lead to a more balanced and innovative work environment. The boundaries between different industries and professional fields would increasingly blur. People would change jobs more frequently over the course of their working lives and combine different skills. This flexibility would lead to a more diverse and adaptable working world. Technology would play a supporting but not dominant role in this new working world. It would be used to automate repetitive tasks and give people more space for creative and strategic activities. At the same time, great emphasis would be placed on the human aspect of work. Work-life integration would reach new dimensions. Work would no longer be seen as a separate sphere of life, but as an integral part of a fulfilling life. This would lead to a more natural balance between professional and private activities. This transformation would also lead to a reassessment of economic success. Companies would no longer be evaluated only on the basis of financial indicators, but also on their contribution to social well-being and sustainable development. The reassessment of the transformation of corporate success, as predicted by Cayce, would bring about fundamental changes in the business world. Companies would redefine their success metrics, taking social, environmental, and ethical aspects into account. This transformation would go far beyond traditional corporate social responsibility. In this new economic order, companies would act as active designers of social change. Their business models would be redesigned from the ground up to maximize positive impacts on society and the environment. Profitability would no longer be seen as the only criterion for success, but would be understood as part of a balanced system of goals. Sustainability would become the core principle of entrepreneurial action. Companies would align their entire value chain with ecological principles and develop innovative solutions to environmental challenges. Circular economy and regenerative practices would become the norm. Relationships with stakeholders would change fundamentally. Instead of short-term profit maximization, the focus would be on long-term value creation for all involved. Employees, customers, suppliers, and local communities would be viewed as equal partners in the company's success. Investment decisions would be made according to new criteria. Impact investing and sustainable finance would become mainstream. Investors would increasingly look for companies that can demonstrate not only financial returns, but also measurable positive impacts on society and the environment. Corporate governance would become more transparent and participatory. Stakeholders would be more involved in decision-making processes, and companies would regularly report on their holistic performance. New governance models would be developed to support this more inclusive form of corporate governance. Innovation would be redefined. In addition to technological innovations, social innovations and systemic solutions would become more important. Companies would invest more in research and development that addresses social challenges. Cooperation between companies would intensify. Competition would be replaced by strategic partnerships that aim to achieve greater positive impact together. Cross-sector cooperation would help solve complex sustainability challenges. Entrepreneurial success would increasingly be measured by the ability to bring about positive change in society. This would lead to a new generation of entrepreneurs who combine business acumen with social commitment and develop innovative solutions to global challenges. The role of companies in society would change fundamentally. They would no longer be perceived as just economic actors, but as active contributors to a better future. This transformation would lead to a fairer and more sustainable economic order. According to Cayce, the transformation to a fairer and more sustainable economic order would manifest itself in various dimensions. This new era would be characterized by a profound rethinking of the way economic activities are organized and evaluated. Companies would reinterpret their role as social actors. They would no longer see themselves as just producers of goods and services, but as active designers of social and ecological transformation. This expanded role would be reflected in concrete measures and programs. The integration of sustainability goals into the core strategy would become a matter of course. Companies would redesign their business models so that they actively contribute to the solution. Societal challenges. Environmental protection, social justice, and economic stability would be seen as equally important corporate goals. A special focus would be placed on the development of regenerative economic practices. Instead of just minimizing damage, companies would actively work to create positive impacts on ecosystems and communities. Circular economy would become the norm. The relationships between companies and their employees would change fundamentally. Fair pay, personal development opportunities, and meaningful work would be recognized as fundamental rights. Employees would be increasingly involved in company profits and decisions. New forms of corporate organization would emerge. Hierarchical structures would be replaced by more flexible, democratic models. Cooperatives, social enterprises, and other alternative organizational forms would gain in importance. The measurement of corporate success would become multidimensional. In addition to financial key figures, social and ecological indicators would be included equally in the assessment. New accounting standards would be developed to reflect this holistic performance. International cooperation would reach a new quality. Companies would increasingly cooperate across national borders to tackle global challenges together. Knowledge sharing and mutual support would become the norm. The financing of companies would change fundamentally. Investors would increasingly look for companies that generate both financial and social returns. New financing instruments would be developed to encourage this type of investment. The relationship between business and society would be redefined. Companies would be seen as an integral part of the social fabric, and their responsibility for the actively perceive the common good. This transformation would lead to an economic order that is not only sustainable and fair, but also innovative and future-proof. The changes predicted by Cayce would pave the way for a new era of economic activity. The new era of economic activity that Cayce predicted would be characterized by revolutionary approaches in all areas of economic life. This transformation would go far beyond superficial adjustments and bring about fundamental changes in the economic mindset. In this new economic order, the principle of orientation towards the common good would be central. Companies would no longer orient their activities primarily towards profit maximization, but towards their contribution to social progress. This would lead to a completely new definition of entrepreneurial success. Innovation would take on a new meaning. Instead of concentrating exclusively on technological innovations, companies would increasingly develop social innovations. These would aim to solve social challenges creatively and sustainably. The world of work would change fundamentally. Flexible working models, lifelong learning, and the integration of well-being in the workplace would become the norm. The strict separation between work and private life would give way to a more holistic view. New forms of collaboration would emerge. Companies would increasingly operate in networks and ecosystems rather than as isolated units. These collaborations would be cross-sectoral and aimed at shared value creation. The financial system would undergo fundamental transformation. New forms of currency, alternative banking models, and innovative financing instruments would emerge. These would be geared towards supporting sustainable and socially responsible projects. The B relationships with the environment would be redefined. Companies would actively take on their responsibility for environmental protection and develop regenerative economic practices. Circular economy and zero-waste concepts would become the norm. Technology would take on a serving role. It would be used to solve societal problems and improve people's lives, not to maximize profit. Ethical considerations would be at the forefront of technology development. Education would adapt to this new economic order. Business courses would increasingly integrate ethical, social, and environmental aspects. A new generation of leaders would grow up who think and act holistically. International economic relations would be based on cooperation rather than competition. Global challenges would be tackled jointly, with each country contributing its specific strengths. The role of the state in the economy would be redefined. Regulation would aim to promote positive developments rather than just preventing misconduct. Public-private partnerships would increase. This new economic order would ultimately lead to a fairer distribution of wealth. Extreme inequalities would be reduced while at the same time incentives for innovation and entrepreneurship would be maintained. The fair distribution of wealth that Cayce prophesied would be achieved through innovative systems and mechanisms. This new economic order would bring about fundamental changes in the way resources and opportunities are distributed in society. A central element of this transformation would be the introduction of new distribution mechanisms. Traditional income structures would be replaced by more flexible and fairer systems. These would not only take monetary aspects into account, but also social and ecological ones, rewarding social contributions to society. The tax systems would be fundamentally reformed. Progressive taxation would be further developed to prevent extreme concentrations of wealth. At the same time, new incentives would be created to promote social entrepreneurship and sustainable investments. Educational opportunities would be democratized. Access to high-quality education would no longer depend on social background. Lifelong learning would be made accessible to all through innovative financing models. Social security systems would be modernized and expanded. New forms of basic security would be developed that would enable all people to live a dignified life. These would be flexible enough to support different life models. Healthcare would become universally accessible. Preventive measures and holistic health concepts would be brought to the fore. The quality of medical care would no longer depend on income. Housing would be recognized as a fundamental human right. New models of communal living and sustainable urban development would be promoted. Speculation with housing would be effectively curbed. Technological innovations would be used in a targeted manner to reduce inequalities. Digital platforms would be developed to distribute resources more efficiently and democratize access to services. The world of work would be made more inclusive. Discrimination would be actively combated and equal opportunities promoted. Flexible working models would enable everyone to participate in working life. Regional economic cycles would be strengthened. Local communities would have more control over their economic development. This would lead to a more balanced distribution of wealth between regions. International trade relations would be made fairer. Developing countries would have better opportunities to participate in global prosperity. Exploitative practices would be replaced by fair trade partnerships. This new distribution of wealth would not only include material aspects, but would also take into account intangible values such as time, education, and quality of life. The goal would be a society in which everyone has the opportunity to fully develop their potential. The development of human potential predicted by Cayce would manifest itself in many different ways. This new social order would create an environment in which everyone could optimally develop their unique skills and talents. Educational institutions would change fundamentally. Instead of standardized curricula, Individual learning paths would be developed that are based on personal strengths and interests. Creativity and critical thinking would be particularly encouraged. Personal development would be given greater importance. Companies and organizations would provide time and resources so that people could develop further. Mentoring programs and coaching would become standard. Spiritual development would be recognized as an important aspect of personal development. Meditation, mindfulness, and other consciousness-expanding practices would be integrated into everyday life. The balance between material and spiritual development would be promoted. New forms of community would emerge. People would come together in flexible networks to learn from and support each other. These communities would emerge across traditional social and cultural boundaries. The work-life balance would be redefined. Flexible working models would make it possible to better combine work, family, and personal development. The strict separation between work and leisure would give way to a more holistic view. Ochin. Technology would be used in a targeted manner to promote personal growth. Digital platforms would be developed that support individual learning and development. Artificial intelligence would be used as a tool to develop potential. Health and well-being would be viewed holistically. Preventive measures and alternative healing methods would be used more. The connection between physical, mental, and emotional health would be recognized. Creative forms of expression would be particularly encouraged. Art, music, and other creative activities would be seen as important aspects of personal development. Cultural institutions would be made accessible to all people. Intergenerational learning would become more important. Exchange between different age groups would be actively encouraged. The wisdom of older people would be valued and combined with the innovative power of youth. This comprehensive promotion of human potential would lead to a richer, more diverse, and more harmonious society. Every person would have the opportunity to find and follow their own individual path. The development of the individual would be understood as an enrichment for society as a whole. A culture of mutual support and appreciation would emerge in which every contribution is recognized as valuable.